This is a graph of my Raspberry Pi's temperature over time, and this is how I made it. To make a dynamic graph, there's three things that are needed. You need to send the data to the database, and it has to be received and put in the right place. And then I have to retrieve the data and display it. This is the basics of sending data from the nodes to the MySQL database. I gather all the relevant information, put it into a JSON file, and then send it off using a curl request. The CPU usage and the temperature are using normal functions. They've just been modified so that they get only the correct information that we're looking for. The node ID is an environment variable, and it is introduced into the bash script via the command source and the file etc environment. That is then put into a JSON file and sent in a post request to the receiving end, in this case addmetrics.php. Adding an environmental variable is easy. You just have to sudo t into etc environment, just append it at the end, and as seen on screen, and then you have to source etc environment. This will update your environment, and the current way I've been setting it is with a bash script that sends the MAC address to a webhook, and then that sends back the node ID, which is just a number. I saw two options to achieve my goal of having this run all the time. The first one was using a while loop in my bash script, so it just runs every 30 seconds. And the other one, which I wanted to try because it challenged me, is to use systemd. This is an example of a service file, and it has many things. The environment file, that's where I store the file location, and then the environment and exec start. And there's one word difference that would make this actually work, and I only see it now as I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. I did spend about 2 hours on this, so I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is. And then the output and error, that's in journal, so I can just not keep a record of it, but if I want to see what it's putting out, I can see with just journal control. This is a timer file, and just make sure it happens every 30 seconds without fail. For debugging service and timer files, this is really good. It gives you information more than having to reload the daemons every time, and ChatGPT gave me an example file that had the comments on the same line as the code, and you're not allowed to do that, and this really helped me figure that out. This is the command I used to know whether or not I was getting packets sent to my Docker container. So it's just a tail, last 3 of the most recent logs. This is what I came to after systemd wasn't working for me. I used a while loop and just went through it, and then sleep 30 at the end there, so it went every 30 seconds. This is just a simple PHP post request and how it just puts it into an SQL query and uses the variables in the PHP. This is a simple PHP SQL query, and it divides the day into 600 seconds, which is 10 minutes. And the two things at the top need to have grouping functions. So for the time we have a minimum, and for the temperature we have an average. It doesn't collect any information from more than a day old, and it just sends everything back in a JSON file. Now, drawing the graph was a little bit more complicated for me, so most of it was put onto ChatGPT. Now, the important functions are fetch data, format data, and format time. And then at the end, it just runs fetch data. The fetch function is just a wrapper so that it calls the JavaScript fetch function on the PHP function we just looked at. The format data function just takes the data in, it separates the time so we can get it to format. So it has that nice just hour minute. And this is important because I had a lot of trouble getting the chart.js to work with JavaScript date format. The format time function takes in the date and returns a string that looks correct. It looks like an hour and minutes. I'm not really sure how the chart.js works, but this works currently, and I just thought I'd show you what it looks like. Looking forward, I'd like it to match the website I made before for my Raspberry Pis and have it that nice color. I also want to eventually filter out based on node ID. Currently, it was just returning all of them. And then also the times are all spaced equally. And if there's time where it isn't there, I want it to be some representation of that. Currently there is none. It's just whatever there is there.